So I'm going to get into my nuts and bolts explanation. I was going to say, I was waiting for you to get back. John was sharing his seemingly bizarre story that you could easily think he was making up, seeing this 7 foot tall shadow-like person running through the beach. But I've had a similar experience where here's the weird thing. You talk about having implanted thoughts, right? I don't want to go into, I had an experience where I heard sounds and saw lights when I was younger that, I was just explaining. It wasn't a misidentified plane or planet or star or anything, because there were multiple lights hovering just a few feet off the ground, just outside my house. And I thought maybe they were headlights, but they definitely were not headlights. There was a lot of strange humming sounds happening. I got pretty terrified, and I basically was a kid, ran back to my bed and decided not to go outside and investigate. Later on in life, I woke up in the middle of the night and had this bizarre feeling that something like that was about to happen again. And for some reason, I felt compelled to go outside. And I walked out to the back door, and before opening the door, I peeked out the curtain and saw a dark figure standing in between my car and the trash cans in the driveway, almost just like staring at me. And it was like a silhouette, like honestly, it looked a lot like Slender Man. Just like couldn't make out clothes, just like you, John.
Bro, don't tell me that's real, because I'll lose sleep tonight.
Well, let me finish the story. So, like, I see this person, but the thing is, it could easily just be a person in a hoodie. It's dark out, you know what I mean? But it's, this person's basically on my property staring at me. I get a little spooked. I close the curtain. I wake my fiance up, and I tell her, hey, I saw someone standing out there, and I want you to come take a look. I want to see if you see this too. Because you got to keep in mind, man, I had this sensation that something odd was going on. And she came out, and when she went to go, we're peeking through the curtains, right? We didn't have we didn't turn any lights on or anything like that. And there was no one there. And I was like, there's no one there. And I was just staring, and I was like, the trash can moved. Like, there's a trash can where the person was standing. He must have moved our trash can. And then all of a sudden, the trash can suddenly just morphed into a person, and she screamed. And I was like, do you see him? Do you see him? She said, yeah. She said, yeah, I see him. And then he started like running around in circles in this really weird jittery pattern. And then kind of just like darted off around the corner. And I mean, that was kind of like the end of it, but like, obviously it spooked us, and it was, unfortunately we weren't able to get on camera. We've put cameras up on that spot since then. But yeah, a shape-shifting shadow person. And even though I didn't get it on camera, at least I got a second eyewitness this time, because I was the only person that saw those lights when I was a kid, and for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable talking about it, because I don't have any proof. I don't even have another eyewitness to back me up, and people are just going to think I'm crazy. So I went probably 15 years not talking about that.
I mean, once people meet you, bro, they're gonna know, or they're gonna think you're crazy, regardless of what you say, anyway. So it's fine.
All right, so let's get into the my nuts and bolts analysis of what are UAPs and how do they work. So the jury really is still out on this. It could be a lot of different things. It could have a nuts and bolts explanation. It could have a more esoteric explanation. The nuts and bolts camp seems largely focused on space-time metric engineering, with little understanding as to how that could possibly work. Physics implies it's possible, but we just don't understand how from an engineering perspective. Some people employ zero-point energy theories. Others refer to Bob Lazar's element 115. I have three possible nuts and bolts explanations that don't revolve around Bob Lazar or zero-point energy. Now, I want to put up a disclaimer that these are not meant to be catch-all explanations. For all we know, we're dealing with multiple technologies. The idea is that in some cases, this may be what we're seeing. Also, if we wanted to replicate these things that we're seeing, this might be how we would do it. I'm going to start with the most grounded in known physics explanations, and then move on to more speculative. I got three basic hypothesis here. So the first one is non-space-time metric engineering using compact fusion with ionic propulsion. So there are ways to explain some UAP without any new physics whatsoever. If some secret organization somewhere had compact fusion reactors, they could be using that technology to power UAP. In fact, this could even be a power source for space-time metric engineering, but a compact fusion reactor would be so powerful that it could create almost all of the anomalous flight characteristics without warping space-time. Hold on. Slightly lost my place. All right. The lack of a propeller or wings or thruster could be explained by little-known non-conventional ion lift and propulsion technologies. These are well-established mechanisms of flight that usually are not considered practical because they are energy inefficient and of little value if you're using conventional fuel sources. Basically, a non-conventional fuel source means you can employ non-conventional flight. There are currently research groups working on compact fusion designs that could achieve this potentially in the not-so-distant future. So this isn't a completely crazy idea that's super sci-fi. We know if we had a compact fusion reactor, we could make things that fly like what we're seeing these things do potentially.
Well, to add something to that, yeah, the only thing that we are, a step away from that, and we're actually developing right now superconductors that, the problem with superconductors is that they have to be, super cooled.
Room temperature superconductor.
Yeah, we're very close to creating functional room temperature superconductors.
Well, I'd like to see some research on that, but
there actually is. In 1987, there was a couple of scientists that basically.
All right, you send me that information, and I'll check that out. But let me finish. I'll let you do your thing. All right. So once you have this small, insanely powerful energy source, and yes, you're right. If we had room temperature superconductors, it would become way easier to make these types of fusion engines. Once you have those, ionic propulsion technology can explain transmedium travel as it can work in air, water, and space, which is what we're observing. It would be very silent, another thing we're observing. It would require different modes for each medium, which also explains commonly reported observations such as it hovered in place and then shot into space like a bullet, or the infamous Tic Tac incident where it hovered over the water, which was described as looking as if it was boiling. This could be an attempt to break the surface tension of the water before entering. Another point I've never heard anybody make before is that most of these craft are observed to have aerodynamic shapes. Triangles, spheres, and cylinders are all very aerodynamic. Based on the principles of form and function, this stands to reason that they may very well be operating under classical aerodynamic flight. I do have some sources I will put in the show notes to support my theory of using specifically aneutronic fusion, compact reactors, and ion-propelled craft, magneto-hydrodynamic drives, and ion thrusters. Second hypothesis, space-time metric engineering. This one's going to be a little bit out there, so you're going to have to bear with me. I have some.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Do you have anything about gamma rays in your evaluation?
No. Let me do my thing, man. Let me do my thing. I got three things here. I got through my first one. All right. So I did an explanation that basically says we don't need some sort of fantastical warp drive to actually explain some of these observations. But now I'm going to get into how maybe an actual warp drive would work, and without using some fancy 0-point energy theory that basically nobody understands. And this is using the information mass equivalency. So the idea we're all familiar with E equals MC squared. This is going to be touching on that. And then it also implements the function of quantum computers. So I'll explain. Although most of these things appear aerodynamic, that doesn't mean they aren't employing multiple different modes of travel. Also, there have been reports of non-aerodynamic shapes such as pyramids and cubes. I can't explain pyramids and cubes as classical aerodynamics, so I have to get into space-time metric engineering now. Additionally, there have been reports of objects that go in and out of the water with ease and great speed, which is also hard to reconcile with my previous explanation. One way space-time metric engineering may be possible is with an added twist to the well-known physics that actually has some backing by a few scientists and even has some observed precedent by researchers. This is the little-known theory that information could be equivalent to mass and energy. The same way Einstein overturned physics by showing mass and energy are equivalent with E equals mc squared, this theory basically says information is also equivalent. A Harvard physicist published a paper in 2019 where he created a mathematical model in which information has a small amount of predictable mass and theorizes an experiment to test the theory where he calculates the difference in mass that should be observed between a storage device of 1 terabyte and one with no data. Unfortunately, we don't yet have sensitive enough measuring devices to test the theory. A second example to add credibility to the information has mass hypothesis is a paper written by Japanese physicists in 2010 where they demonstrated conversion of information into energy without violating the second law of thermodynamics. It's a pretty complicated experiment, but essentially they made a particle do work by receiving information rather than energy. And I will include that in the show notes. Now that I've established that the notion that information could be equivalent to mass and energy, I want to explain how this could be used for space-time metric engineering. Basically, in the same way the physicist wants to use a large amount of data to detect the mass of the information in a hard drive, I believe a sufficiently advanced quantum computer could have the same effect. Rather than storing a terabyte of data, we would process a terabyte of data. Same thing. It would have the same effect. But then if we ramp it up to way more than a terabyte of data, which is conceivable with a quantum computer, we would start generating massive gravitational waves. And because we're using a computer, we can change the way it's processed to warp space-time to our will. Even more interesting, a quantum computer such as this not only would become a space-time metric engineering craft, but it could be quantum entangled, so its operator and power source entangled to its operator and power source and basically travel without an onboard power source or operator across limitless amounts of space and time. This is due to quantum entanglement, which I should probably add some quantum entanglement stuff to the show notes. And I'm definitely going to add, the different papers so people can look into those explanations. So my third hypothesis to try to explain some of the bizarre things we're observing here is directed energy weapons. There is some speculation that when it comes to UAP reports, there is more than meets the eye. There have been odd and varying reports that coincide with UAP. Everything from Bigfoot, animal mutilations, poltergeists, telepathic messages, lights, portals, crafts, beings, shadow people, wolfmen, mothmen, cryptid animals, you name it. Places like Skinwalker Ranch, the Bridgewater Triangle, and Point Pleasant, West Virginia have a rich history of these all being sighted in the same geographical locations. Sometimes...
Where? West Virginia?
Yeah, the Mothman prophecies happened in...
How close to the Kentucky mountains is that?
Dude, come on, man. I'm almost done.
You can't answer a simple question?
I don't know. I'm like geographically retarded. I can put stuff in the show notes.
Dude, you've been talking for 37 minutes, and John put up both of us asking him questions. You can't answer one goddamn question?
I don't know.
Come
The answer is I don't know. I don't know how close it is to Kentucky.
I'll have to Google it.
Yeah, Google it. All right, so...
I don't even know where I'm looking.
All right, so one possible explanation for these, all these strange phenomena, especially if it's happening in the same location, if you want to apply a nuts and bolts perspective, is a directed energy weapon. something that has the ability to manipulate our perception. You may not be able to actually trust what you see and hear. It's not inconceivable that a kind of directed energy weapon designed to cause hallucinations could be used in some circumstances as a way for whatever's operating those weapons to disguise themselves. It sounds crazy, I know, but there is some science behind its plausibility. The microwave hearing effect, or the Frey effect, consists of the human perception of audible clicks, or even speech, induced by pulsed or modulated radio frequencies. The communications are generated directly inside the human head without the need of any receiving electronic device. The effect was first reported by persons working in the vicinity of radar transponders during World War II. So this is actually not just a known effect, but it's been a known effect for quite some time. There's also the recent revelations about Havana syndrome, which is a reported mysterious condition affecting U.S. diplomats and believed to be the result of directed energy weapons. Its exact origin and cause is still under investigation and highly classified, but is an established real affliction, with some people displaying actual brain damage during brain imaging. It will include, I'm going to include links to all that as well, because I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but it's real. So I'm saying, instead of your jinn hypothesis, which could be true, but humans could also essentially recreate the same effect, just by modulating different frequencies and directing it directly into your brain. And if they could make you think you're hearing someone talk to you, or potentially even see things that aren't there.